Hey guys, tonight we're going to dive deep into a reality far removed from our cozy beds and climate controlled rooms. Imagine, if you will, the biting wind whipping across a desolate plain, or the sun beating down relentlessly on a column of sweating, dust choked men. You're there right alongside them, a fresh recruit in the Roman legions, and believe me, your chances of making it through alive are, well, let's just say a modern survivalist might need a few millennia of practice. Before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing, or rather swaying, on the parade ground. The Roman sun, even in these early training days, feels less like a gentle warmth and more like a blacksmith's forge on your bare head. The clang of metal, the guttural shouts of the drill sergeants, the rhythmic thump of dozens of feet marching in unison. It's a symphony of impending misery. You're no longer a farm boy, a city artisan, or a hopeful young man dreaming of glory. You are a tyro, a recruit, and your comfortable life, whatever it was, has vanished faster than a Roman politician's promises. Your first encounter with the Roman military machine isn't on a battlefield, but in the relentless, soul-crushing grind of basic training. They call it disciplina, and you'll quickly learn that it's less about being disciplined and more about being broken down and rebuilt. Every muscle in your body screams in protest. You wake before dawn, the chill of the morning air biting at your skin, only to be thrown into drills that push you to your physical limits. You march for hours under a simulated full pack, a burden that feels as if it contains every rock from the nearby hills. Your shoulders ache, your feet blister, and the constant threat of a sharp reprimand, or worse, a physical correction from a centurion's vine stick, keeps you moving forward. You've heard stories of these sticks, VTs, how they can break skin and bones. It's a stark reminder that disobedience isn't an option. The training isn't just about brute force, it's about precision, about becoming a cog in a perfectly oiled machine. You spend countless hours practicing formations, learning to move as one with the men around you. The testudo, the famous tortoise formation, looks simple enough in diagrams, but try holding that massive shield, your scutum weighing in at around 20 pounds over your head, for an extended period, packed shoulder to shoulder with sweating, breathing men. And you'll quickly understand the sheer physical demands. Your arms feel like lead, and the constant jostling makes it impossible to find a comfortable position. You're also practicing with your gladius, the short, double-edged sword that will be your constant companion. It feels unwieldy at first, an extension you haven't quite mastered. The drills focus on thrusting rather than slashing, aiming for vulnerable spots, a brutal efficiency you're slowly internalizing. You jab, parry, and thrust, sweat pouring down your face, your muscles burning with an unfamiliar fire. But it's not just the physical discomfort, it's the mental game too. You're constantly being tested, pushed, and yelled at. There's no room for individuality, no time for personal grievances. You eat, sleep, and breathe with the same group of men. You quickly learn their quirks, their smells, their endless complaints. Some grumble constantly, others fall silent, their faces etched with a grim determination. You find yourself doing both. The only escape is the brief respite of sleep, and even then your dreams are often filled with the shouts of centurions or the phantom weight of your pack. One of the most immediate shocks is the food. Gone are the varied meals you might have enjoyed at home. Here your staple is pulmentum, a thick porridge often made from wheat or barley, sometimes with vegetables and a bit of meat if you're lucky. It's nutritious, yes, but bland, and the quantity is just enough to keep you going, not to make you feel full or satisfied. You eat quickly, often standing, and learn not to be squeamish about what's offered. Sometimes you'll get buccellatum, a hardtack biscuit so tough it feels like it could break your teeth. You learn to dunk it in water or wine to soften it, a small luxury that makes it edible. You're constantly hungry, a gnawing emptiness in your stomach that no amount of porridge seems to fill. Hygiene, too, becomes a desperate struggle. Imagine hundreds, sometimes thousands of men all living in close quarters with limited access to clean water and even more limited sanitation facilities. Latrines are basic, often just trenches, and disease spreads like wildfire. You become intimately familiar with the symptoms of various stomach ailments, and a persistent cough seems to be a permanent resident in the barracks. You try to keep your uniform and yourself as clean as possible, but it's a losing battle against the dust, sweat, and grime that cling to everything. The Roman army, for all its might, was a breeding ground for bacteria, and many more soldiers died from illness than from enemy blades. Historians still debate whether the Roman legionaries' disciplined hygiene practices were truly effective in preventing widespread disease, given the rudimentary understanding of germ theory at the time. It's a sobering thought, isn't it? You might survive the battle only to be felled by a rogue microbe. Speaking of ailments, let's talk about the constant aches and pains. Your feet are perpetually sore, covered in blisters that pop and reform. Your back feels like a perpetually stiff board, and your muscles are in a constant state of rebellion. But complaining isn't an option. You learn to push through the pain, to ignore the discomfort, because showing weakness is an invitation for more punishment, or worse, a sign that you're not cut out for this life. You see men wash out, sent home in disgrace, unable to withstand the rigors. And you, in your raw determination, decide that won't be you. One day, during a particularly grueling march, your centurion, a grizzled veteran with eyes that seem to see right through you, catches your eye. He doesn't offer a kind word or a pat on the back. Instead, he simply says, "The Legion cares for itself, recruit. You are part of the Legion now." It's a harsh truth delivered with the subtlety of a hammer blow. Your individual well-being is secondary to the needs of the unit. Your survival, in essence, becomes tied to the survival of the collective. This isn't a warm and fuzzy feeling. It's a stark realization that your life is no longer entirely your own. You quickly learn the language of the camp, a crude mix of Latin regional dialects and grunts. You learn to interpret the shouts of command, the subtle nuances in a fellow soldier's expression, the quick glances that convey a message without a single word. You learn who to trust, who to avoid, and who might just be able to lighten the mood with a crude joke or whispered story from home. These small human connections forged in the crucible of shared suffering become surprisingly important. You might grumble about the man next to you, but when the moment comes, you know he'll have your back and you his. It's a strange kind of camaraderie built not on friendship but on mutual dependence. The training culminates in a long, simulated campaign. You march for days carrying your full pack, your weapon, and your meager provisions. You learn to set up camp quickly, to dig trenches, to build palisades. You sleep under the open sky or in makeshift tents, the ground hard and unforgiving beneath you. You experience what it means to be truly exhausted, to feel your body screaming for rest and yet to keep moving. You're learning to ignore the gnawing hunger, the constant thirst, the nagging aches. This is where you truly shed the last vestiges of your civilian life and begin to understand the true meaning of being a Roman soldier. One evening, huddled around a small, smoky fire with a few other recruits, a more experienced soldier of Miles, who's seen a few campaigns, tells a story. He talks about the time his unit ran out of water in the desert and how they had to chew on roots to extract any moisture. He describes the hallucination, the overwhelming thirst, and the sheer elation when they finally stumbled upon a small, muddy spring. It's a terrifying story, but also a testament to human endurance, a glimpse into the raw, unforgiving reality that awaits you beyond the training grounds. You realize that your current discomfort is just the prelude. The real challenges, the truly brutal ones, are yet to come. It's a morbid thought, but strangely, it solidifies something within you. You are in this now. There is no turning back. You have to adapt. You have to survive. The world outside the training camp unfolds before you, vast and unforgiving. You are now a Miles, a soldier, no longer a mere recruit, but the transition feels less like an achievement and more like an initiation into a perpetual state of motion. The Roman army is first and foremost a marching army. Forget the grand battles and the glory. For you, the brutal truth of military life is the incessant, mind-numbing, bone-wearying act of putting one foot in front of the other day after day, week after week, across landscapes that seem actively hostile to your existence. You quickly learn the cadence, the rhythm of the Legion on the move. Each man carries an astonishing amount of weight. Your sarcina, your personal pack, often weighing upwards of 40 pounds, containing everything you own and need to survive. This isn't some lightweight camping gear. We're talking about your personal belongings, your tools, your meager rations, and a few days' worth of supplies. On top of that, you carry your armor, the heavy lorica segmentata that chafes against your skin, the scutum on your arm, your gladius, and pilum. You're essentially a walking armored pack mule, and every step is a testament to the brutal efficiency of Roman engineering, both of their roads and of your body. The marching speed is relentless. The Roman legion was renowned for its forced marches covering distances that would cripple a modern, less trained force. You're expected to cover anywhere from 15 to 20 miles a day, sometimes more, especially if there's a strategic need. Imagine that for a moment, 20 miles in full gear under the scorching sun, or through the driving rain. Your calves burn, your thighs ache, and your shoulders feel like they're about to dislocate from the sheer pressure of your pack straps. You learn to walk in a kind of trance, your eyes fixed on the dust-covered boots of the man in front of you, your mind numb to the discomfort. The roads, while often impressive feats of Roman engineering, are not always perfectly smooth. You might be traversing rocky terrain, wading through muddy streams, or slogging through thick forest where the path is barely discernible. Your caligae, the hobnailed Roman sandals, offer some grip, but they do little to protect your feet from blisters, cuts, and the constant jarring impact of thousands of steps. You see men fall out of formation overcome by exhaustion or injury. Some are helped by their comrades, others are left behind to await the slower supply train, or worse, to become prey for opportunistic bandits or hostile locals. The unspoken rule is clear: keep up or be left to your fate. Hydration is a constant, desperate battle. You carry a water skin, but it's rarely enough. The sun seems to bake the moisture right out of you, and the dusty air irritates your throat. You learn to ration your sips to feel the dryness in your mouth and to long for the sight of a stream or well. When you finally reach a water source, it's a chaotic scramble. You gulp down the cool liquid, feeling it revive your parched insides, knowing full well that in a few hours the thirst will return with a vengeance. Historians still debate the precise methods Roman soldiers used to purify water on the march beyond simply boiling it, and how effective they were at preventing waterborne diseases. It's a miracle anyone survived for long. Food on the march is even more basic than in the camp. Often you're subsisting on those tough butylatum biscuits and whatever dried meat or cheese you can carry. Hot meals are rare, reserved for when you make a more permanent camp. You learn to chew slowly, to savor every meager bite, to suppress the constant rumbling in your stomach. Sometimes you'll forage scrounging for wild berries or edible roots, but this is a risky venture and often forbidden, as it can slow the column or expose you to danger. The Legion moves as a single hungry entity. Sleep is a luxury snatched in brief, uncomfortable intervals. When you halt for the night, the first order of business isn't rest but labor. You are a Roman soldier, which means you are also a Roman engineer. Every night, no matter how exhausted you are, you participate in the construction of a marching camp, a temporary but fortified enclosure. You dig trenches, raise earthworks, and erect palisades. This isn't a quick job. It's hours of back-breaking work wielding a pickaxe and shovel, even after a full day's march. It's a brilliant system for security, ensuring that you're always protected from surprise attacks, but it's also another layer of exhaustion piled onto an already weary body. You often fall asleep almost instantly, wrapped in your cloak on the hard ground, your body protesting every strained muscle. You get maybe 4 or 5 hours, sometimes less, before the trumpets blare, signaling the start of another day's march. The mental toll of this constant movement is immense. Your mind drifts sometimes to memories of home, sometimes to fantasies of a warm bath and a full meal. You learn to disconnect, to allow your body to move on autopilot while your mind seeks refuge in these small escapes. You develop a kind of gallows humor with your fellow legionaries, sharing dry, sarcastic jokes about the quality of the food or the insanity of your centurion. These moments of shared levity are like tiny oases in the desert of your suffering, allowing you to briefly forget the blisters and the hunger. Remember that time you complained about the hardtack? Well, now you'd kill for a whole one, not just a few crumbs. The weather becomes a character in itself, an antagonist, as formidable as any barbarian tribe. In summer, the heat is suffocating. Dust clings to your sweat-soaked skin, forming a gritty second layer. Your tongue feels like sandpaper, and your head throbs from the sun's relentless assault. You learn to protect yourself to cover your head with a piece of cloth, to seek out any scrap of shade during brief halts. In winter, the cold bites deep. Your hands and feet become numb, your breath mists in the frigid air, and the ground turns to frozen mud, making every step treacherous. You huddle with your comrades, sharing what little warmth you can generate, dreaming of a roaring fire and dry clothes. Hypothermia is a silent killer slowly draining the life from those who can't keep moving, who can't find warmth. You learn to sleep as close to your fellow soldiers as possible, sharing body heat, a small, desperate comfort against the pervasive cold. One particularly memorable march takes you through a dense forest where the canopy overhead blocks out the sun, and the air is thick with the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves. The path is narrow, winding and overgrown, forcing you to constantly push aside branches and navigate around fallen trees. The constant threat of ambush hangs heavy in the air, a silent predator waiting to strike. Your palom, your heavy javelin, feels clumsy in your hand, more of a hindrance than a help in the close confines. You rely on the men around you, your eyes constantly scanning the shadows, your ears straining for any unnatural sound. This is where the training kicks in, the instinct to react, to form a defensive line, to brace for impact. You're not just marching, you're perpetually on guard. The sight of the enemy is often a perverse relief. At least then the anticipation ends and the fight begins. But even after a skirmish, the march resumes. There's no time for extended rest, no chance to fully recover. You simply clean your blade, check your armor, tend to any minor wounds, and then you start moving again. The legion, like a relentless river, flows onward, carrying you along in its current. You become a creature of habit. Your life dictated by the rhythm of the march, the construction of the camp, the brief hours of sleep, and the endless pursuit of the next objective. It's a brutal cycle designed to break the weak and temper the strong. You often wonder how much longer you can endure, but the alternative, falling behind, abandoning your comrades, is unthinkable. You just keep moving one agonizing step at a time. The distant sound of a bugle signaling another dawn is no longer a welcome sound. It's a call to resume your unending journey. Having survived the relentless grind of the march, you now face the unique challenges of the Roman military camp, your temporary home away from home. This isn't just a place to rest your weary bones. It's a meticulously organized, self-contained community designed for maximum efficiency and, more importantly, survival. You quickly realize that escaping the rigors of the road only throws you into a different kind of Spartan existence, where the battle isn't always with barbarians, but with boredom, disease, and the pervasive strictures of military life. Your living quarters are called a contubernium, a small tent or barrack room you share with 7 other men. 8 men crammed into a space barely large enough for 4. Imagine the smells: stale sweat, damp leather, unwashed bodies, and the lingering odor of whatever meager meal you manage to cook. Personal space is a forgotten concept. You sleep shoulder to shoulder, your feet often brushing against another man's head, listening to the cacophony of snores, coughs, and the occasional mumbled dream. Privacy is non-existent, and you learn to do everything: eat, sleep, dress, even attend to personal needs, with an audience. This forced intimacy quickly reveals the true characters of your tent mates, for better or worse. You'll quickly learn who snores the loudest, who has a nervous twitch, and who can always be relied upon for a grim joke to cut through the monotony. Daily life in the camp is rigidly structured, governed by the sound of the bugle or horn. You wake before dawn, the first blast tearing you from your fitful sleep. There's no hitting snooze here. You quickly shake off the lingering fog of exhaustion, pull on your still damp uniform, and prepare for the day's duties. These duties are varied and relentless. You might be assigned to guard duty, standing watch at the ramparts, your eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of trouble. The nights are long and cold, and the silence, broken only by the chirping of crickets or the rustling of leaves, can be unnerving. You learn to listen intently, to identify every sound, to distinguish between the wind and a potential intruder. Falling asleep on guard duty is perhaps one of the most serious offenses, carrying a brutal punishment. So you fight against the heavy eyelids, sometimes resorting to pinching yourself or walking briskly to stay awake. Other days, you're part of the fatigue detail, an endless cycle of manual labor. You might be digging trenches, repairing palisades, fetching water from a distant stream, or gathering firewood. The work is physically demanding even after a long march. Your hands become calloused, your back perpetually aches, and your muscles are in a constant state of fatigue. There's no escaping the work. Idleness is not tolerated. This constant exertion, however, serves a dual purpose. It keeps you physically fit, and it keeps you too tired to cause trouble. A tired soldier is a compliant soldier. Then there's the relentless training. Even in camp, the drills continue. You practice weapon handling formation movements and mock skirmishes. The centurions are hawk-eyed, quick to correct any lapse in form or attention. You learn to move with your shield and sword as extensions of your body, your movements becoming fluid and instinctive. The goal is not just to be strong, but to be efficient, to react without thinking, to become a seamless part of the legionary machine. You're taught that your life and the lives of your comrades depend on this perfect synchronization. But the most insidious enemy in the camp is often disease. With hundreds, sometimes thousands of men living in close quarters, often with poor sanitation and limited access to clean water, illness spreads like wildfire. Dysentery is common, a debilitating ailment that leaves you weak and dehydrated. Fevers rage through the camp, leaving men delirious and shivering. Infections from minor cuts and scrapes can quickly turn deadly without proper medical attention. You learn to recognize the signs of illness in your comrades and in yourself, and a deep, quiet dread often settles in when someone starts coughing or complaining of stomach cramps. The Roman army did have medics or medici, but their knowledge was rudimentary by modern standards. They could set broken bones and treat wounds, but they had no understanding of germs, and their methods often involved things like cauterization or herbal remedies, which had varying degrees of success. Scholarly debates persist about the actual mortality rates from disease versus combat wounds in the Roman legions, with many arguing that illness was by far the greater killer. You often see men simply waste away succumbing to a nameless fever, their bodies too weak to fight back. It's a stark reminder of your own vulnerability. To combat disease, or at least to manage the inevitable sanitation, however basic is a priority. Latrines are dug, usually trenches, and attempts are made to keep them separate from water sources. But the sheer volume of waste and the limitations of their technology mean that the air often carries a faint, unpleasant odor. You become accustomed to it just as you become accustomed to the ever-present flies. Clean water, when available, is guarded fiercely. You fill your water skin hoping against hope that the source isn't contaminated upstream. Boiling water, while known, isn't always feasible or convenient on a large scale, and so you often drink whatever you can get, trusting to luck. Food in camp is usually an improvement over marching rations, but not by much. You might get a warm meal of pulmentum porridge or panis militaris military bread, often supplemented with some meat or vegetables if supplies are plentiful. The army tried to provide a balanced diet, but logistics were always a challenge. You might go days without fresh meat, relying on salted provisions or dried legumes. You learn to appreciate every crumb, every scrap, and to eat quickly, knowing that tomorrow's meal is never guaranteed. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you might be able to supplement your diet with foraging, though this is usually done discreetly and at your own risk. Imagine the thrill of finding a patch of wild onions or edible mushrooms, a small fleeting luxury in an otherwise austere existence. Evenings in camp offer a brief respite from the day's toil. After your duties, you might gather with your tent mates, sharing stories, playing simple games like dice, or just sitting in companionable silence. These are the moments when the bonds of camaraderie truly solidify. You talk about home, about the girls you left behind, about your dreams for a future you might never see. There's a dark humor that pervades these conversations, a way of coping with the ever-present threat of death. Someone might crack a joke about how the only way to get a good meal is to capture an enemy supply train, or how your centurion's breath could strip paint off a wall. These aren't polished jokes. They're raw, a little cynical, but deeply human, serving as vital emotional outlets. You remember the old soldier who shared his water scarcity story. Now you have your own stories to tell, equally harrowing, equally absurd. Discipline is the bedrock of camp life. Every aspect of your existence is governed by rules, and infractions are met with swift, often brutal punishment. Theft, insubordination, cowardice. These are not tolerated. You might see a man beaten with sticks fustigatio for a minor offense, or even executed for more serious crimes. This harsh discipline, while terrifying, instills a deep sense of order and obedience. You learn to follow orders without question to maintain formation, to act as a cohesive unit because your life literally depends on it. The centurion's vetus is a constant visible reminder of the authority that keeps the legion functioning. It's a system designed to create not just soldiers, but automatons capable of enduring unimaginable hardship and executing commands without hesitation. So as you lay in your cramped tent, listening to the murmurs of your sleeping comrades, the sounds of the camp settle around you. The distant clanking of a guard's armor, the whinny of a horse, the faint flickering glow of a distant campfire. You are exhausted, your body aching, your mind weary, but you are alive. And in this brutal, unforgiving world of the Roman military camp, that is a victory in itself. Every day is a battle even without an enemy in sight, a battle against discomfort, disease, and the relentless demands of the legion. You are a small part of a vast, unyielding machine, and your survival hinges on your ability to adapt, endure, and ultimately become as unyielding as the empire you serve. You've endured the march, survived the camp, and now a new gnawing anxiety takes hold, the constant, often desperate struggle for food and water. In the Roman legion, these aren't just necessities. They are strategic assets critical to your survival and the success of any campaign. You quickly learn that a full stomach and a hydrated body are luxuries rarely afforded, and the art of staying fed and watered becomes a daily grueling battle against scarcity. Your primary source of sustenance is the military ration or annona. Theoretically, this is a fixed amount of grain, usually wheat or barley, issued to you regularly. In practice, however, its quantity and quality vary wildly. Sometimes you might receive a generous allocation. Other times it's barely enough to keep a bird alive. You become adept at grinding your own grain, a tedious and strenuous task, often using a small hand mill shared among your contubernium. The resulting flour is then mixed with water and baked into those infamous tooth-shattering military biscuits, or panis militaris. You learn to dunk them in whatever liquid is available, water, thin wine, or even a bit of vinegar, just to make them palatable. They're bland, dry, and often crumbly, but they're calories, and calories mean survival. Meat is a rare treat. While the Roman army did provide meat, it was often salted or dried to preserve it, making it tough and often tasteless. Fresh meat was a luxury usually only available if the legion managed to forage successfully or capture livestock from an enemy. Imagine the sheer delight, the primal satisfaction of a hot meal with actual fresh meat after weeks of gnawing on dry biscuits. It's a moment of pure, unadulterated joy quickly savored before the reality of the campaign reasserts itself. You learn to eat anything offered without question or complaint. Even gristle and fat become prized commodities, providing much-needed energy. Vegetables and legumes such as beans and lentils would sometimes supplement your diet, especially if the army was campaigning in fertile territory. These offered vital vitamins and minerals, helping to ward off diseases like scurvy, which could decimate a unit. But again, consistency was the problem. You might go for extended periods without any fresh produce, relying solely on your grain and dried meat. Historians still debate the precise nutritional completeness of the Roman military diet and how much it contributed to long-term health issues among veterans. It's clear, though, that it was a diet designed for survival and energy, not for gourmet dining or optimal health. The greatest challenge, however, isn't just finding food, but protecting it. Your rations are your lifeblood. Theft is rampant in the Legion, and a hungry soldier is a desperate soldier. You guard your meager possessions, fiercely sleeping with your personal bag tucked close to your body, your hand instinctively checking for its presence throughout the night. A lost or stolen ration could mean days of gnawing hunger, weakening you, and making you more susceptible to illness or exhaustion. You quickly learn not to trust anyone with your food, not even your closest comrades when starvation looms. Then there's the water. Oh, the water. On the march, your water skin is your most precious possession, a constantly diminishing lifeline. You learn to recognize the subtle signs of dehydration, the metallic taste in your mouth, the throbbing headache, the overwhelming fatigue. Every drop is precious, every sip carefully measured. You develop a sixth sense for water sources, the greener vegetation, the slightly cooler air, the distant sound of trickling water. Reaching a stream or well after a long, dry march is like discovering a gold mine. You push and shove to get to the front, desperate for a few gulps of the cool, life-giving liquid. But water isn't always clean. You drink from stagnant pools, muddy rivers, and wells that might be contaminated by disease or animal waste. You try to filter it through cloth if you have any, but it's a meager defense. Boiling water is ideal, but rarely practical on the move or for an entire legion. You witness comrades succumb to agonizing stomach ailments, their bodies racked with fever, and dysentery consequences of contaminated water. You know that every drink is a gamble, a roll of the dice with your own health. Remember that gnawing feeling of hunger. Now couple it with a thirst so intense your tongue feels like sandpaper, and your throat burns with every breath. That's the reality. Sometimes the Army's logistics fail or you find yourselves in hostile territory where foraging is impossible. These are the times of true scarcity when hunger becomes a living, breathing entity, a constant companion. You learn to ignore the growling in your stomach, to push past the weakness in your limbs. You might resort to eating roots bark or whatever small, unlucky creatures you can catch, however unappetizing. You see men grow gaunt, their eyes sunken, their movements slow and deliberate. The sheer effort of walking, of carrying your gear, of performing your duties becomes an almost unbearable burden when your body is starved of fuel. There's a grim joke that makes the rounds during these lean times. A Roman soldier can march on an empty stomach, but he can't fight on one. It's a dark truth underscoring the vital link between sustenance and combat effectiveness. You understand that your leaders are constantly calculating risks, weighing the need for speed against the need for resupply. Sometimes speed wins, and you pay the price with aching hunger. The search for food and water also becomes a constant psychological burden. Every halt, every scouting mission, every glimpse of the surrounding countryside is viewed through the lens of potential resources. Is there a village nearby that could be a source of grain? Is there a hidden spring that could quench the legion's thirst? These thoughts dominate your waking hours, overriding almost everything else. The instinct for self-preservation, stripped down to its most basic form, revolves around finding that next meal, that next gulp of water. You learn to be incredibly resourceful. A discarded piece of leather might be boiled down to extract some meager nutrients. Wild berries, if identified correctly, offer a fleeting burst of sweetness and vitamins. You become a connoisseur of edible weeds, a hunter of small game, a master of making a little go a very long way. It's not about enjoying food, it's about survival. Every calorie is a precious resource, every drop of water, a life-sustaining miracle. Even when supplies are adequate, the monotony of the diet can be soul-crushing. Day after day, the same dry bread, the same watery porridge. Your senses crave variety, but the Legion provides only efficiency. It's a psychological battle as much as a physical one, battling the despair that comes with endless sameness and pervasive hunger. You dream of the rich, varied meals of home, of fresh fruit and roasted meats, and the memory only makes your current reality more stark. So as you force another piece of hardtack into your weary mouth, chasing it down with a lukewarm sip of questionable water, you understand that surviving a Roman campaign isn't just about dodging enemy blades. It's about conquering the constant gnawing emptiness in your stomach and the burning thirst in your throat. It's about making do with less, about finding resilience in scarcity, and about a relentless, unending struggle against the most fundamental needs of the human body. Having battled the elements' disease and the relentless pangs of hunger, you now confront another critical aspect of Roman military survival: your equipment. Far from being mere accessories, your armor, weapons, and tools are extensions of your very being, meticulously designed and maintained to keep you alive. You quickly realize that a broken buckle, a dull blade, or a frayed rope can mean the difference between life and death on a brutal campaign. Your most iconic piece of kit is undoubtedly the scutum, that massive rectangular shield. It's more than just a piece of wood and leather, it's a mobile fortress. Roughly 4 feet long and 2.5 feet wide, is designed to protect almost your entire body. You learn to brace it against blows, to use its curved surface to deflect arrows and javelins, and to lock it with your comrades' shields to form an impenetrable wall. But carrying it is a constant workout. Weighing in at about 20 pounds, it strains your arm and shoulder, especially during long marches or extended periods of combat. You learn to shift its weight, to rest it strategically, and to always keep it between you and whatever danger looms. Maintaining it is vital, ensuring the leather is treated, the edges are reinforced, and the central metal dome, is secure. A damaged scutum can leave you fatally exposed. Then there's your armor. For many legionaries, this would be the lorica segmentata, a complex system of overlapping iron plates held together by leather straps and bronze buckles. It offers excellent protection against slashing and thrusting blows, turning aside enemy weapons with a satisfying clang. But it's heavy, about 20 pounds, and notoriously hot in warm climates. Imagine wearing a metal oven while marching miles under the Mediterranean sun. The straps chafe, the metal digs into your skin, and the sweat collects in rivulets beneath the plates. Putting it on and taking it off is a ritual, a delicate dance of buckles and straps, often requiring the help of a comrade. Its maintenance is a constant chore. Rust is your sworn enemy. You spend hours cleaning and oiling the individual plates, checking the leather for signs of wear, and polishing the bronze fittings. A rusty joint or a snapped strap could leave a vital part of your body unprotected, and a single well-aimed blow could spell your end. Your primary weapon is the gladius, the short, double-edged sword that defines Roman infantry combat. It's not for hacking and slashing like a barbarian's longsword. The gladius is a thrusting weapon designed for close quarters fighting, for finding the gaps in an enemy's armor and delivering quick, lethal stabs. You spend countless hours drilling with it, learning to thrust parry and pull back with precision. Keeping it sharp is paramount. A dull blade is useless, a liability in the heat of battle. You carry a whetstone and spend precious free moments honing its edge, feeling the keenness with your thumb. The hilt must be secure, the blade firmly attached to the grip. Your life depends on it. Accompanying your gladius is the pilum, a heavy javelin. This isn't a simple spear, it's a sophisticated piece of engineering designed to penetrate enemy shields and armor, or to lodge itself so deeply that it becomes a cumbersome burden, forcing the enemy to discard their shield. The pilum has a long, thin iron shank, designed to bend on impact, making it unusable by the enemy if thrown back. You usually carry two, throwing them just before the charge, aiming to disrupt the enemy formation and create openings. Practicing with the pilum involves learning to throw it with accuracy and force, a skill that requires significant arm strength and coordination. Beyond your primary weapons and armor, there's a surprising array of tools that are essential for survival. Remember those marching camps you build every night. For that, you carry a delabra, a combination pickaxe and shovel. This isn't a light tool. It's sturdy and heavy, designed for digging earthworks and felling trees. You are in essence a walking construction crew. Then there's the sarcina, your personal pack, often carried on a pole known as a furca. This pole, forked at the top, allows you to sling your belongings over your shoulder, distributing the weight. Inside your sarcina, you'll find a small cooking pot patra, or situla, a mess tin, a few days' rations, a water-skin, personal hygiene items, however rudimentary, and perhaps a spare tunic. Every item in that pack is essential, and you learn to pack it efficiently, ensuring everything is secure and accessible. One of the less glamorous but incredibly important pieces of equipment is your caligae, your heavy-soled marching sandals studded with hobnails. These aren't for fashion. They're designed for endurance, providing grip on varied terrain and protecting your feet. Yet they are still prone to wear and tear. A broken strap or a worn-out sole can make marching excruciatingly painful, hindering your ability to keep up. You learn to inspect them daily, to repair them with whatever materials are available, knowing that healthy feet are crucial for any soldier. Archaeological evidence often reveals a surprising array of repair tools carried by legionaries, suggesting constant, on-the-spot maintenance was a routine part of their lives. The Roman soldier was his own cobbler, tailor, and blacksmith to a certain extent. The concept of maintenance is ingrained in you from the moment you join. Every spare moment is used to clean, repair, and prepare your gear. You oil your armor, sharpen your blade, check the rivets on your shield. You learn to recognize the subtle signs of wear and tear to preempt a breakage before it happens. This isn't just a military regulation, it's a survival imperative. Your life depends on your gear, and neglecting it is akin to signing your own death warrant. A rusty sword can break mid-swing, a worn sandal can cause a debilitating injury, and a damaged shield can expose you to a fatal blow. The sheer weight of all this equipment is a constant burden. On a typical march, you might be carrying upwards of 60, 70 pounds of gear. Imagine marching 20 miles a day, then digging a trench, then fighting a battle, all while weighed down by this immense load. It's a testament to the physical conditioning of Roman soldiers, but also to the unforgiving nature of their campaigns. Every ounce counts, and you quickly learn to shed anything that isn't absolutely essential. Luxury items are left behind. Only what is critical for survival makes the cut. There's a strange, almost intimate relationship you develop with your equipment. Your scutum becomes your trusted companion, your gladius an extension of your arm. You rely on them implicitly knowing that they are often the only thing standing between you and oblivion. You learn to trust the feel of your pilum in your hand, the balance of your gladius as you parry. They are not just tools, they are the very instruments of your continued existence. You also learn to be incredibly resourceful with what you have. If a strap breaks, you improvise a repair with a piece of rope or a strip of leather. If a blade chips, you work to reshape it, even if it means losing some length. There are no supply chains delivering new equipment to the front lines every day. What you start with is largely what you have to make do with repairing and reusing until an item is utterly beyond salvage. This forced ingenuity becomes a hallmark of your time in the Legion. So as you sit by a flickering campfire, meticulously cleaning the grime from your lorica segmentata, or carefully sharpening the edge of your gladius, you understand that survival in the Roman army isn't just about courage or strength. It's about the constant, diligent care of the tools that keep you alive. Your armor is your second skin, your weapons, your teeth and claws. Neglect them at your peril, for on the brutal frontier of the Roman Empire, your very existence often hangs by the strength of a strap, the keenness of a blade, or the integrity of your shield. It's a never-ending cycle of use and repair, a silent testament to the ingenuity and resilience required to survive. You've faced the march, endured the camp, and meticulously maintained your gear. Now, however, you confront an enemy far more insidious than any barbarian horde, or even the biting cold disease and injury and the rudimentary state of Roman military medicine. You quickly learn that on campaign a simple cut can be a death sentence, and a rampant fever can decimate a legion faster than any battle. Imagine a battlefield littered with the wounded. The air is thick with the metallic tang of blood, the screams of the injured and the low moans of those too weak to cry out. You've seen comrades fall struck by javelins, hacked by swords, or crushed by cavalry. Your own heart pounds a frantic drum against your ribs. When the dust settles or when the skirmish ends, the grim task of tending to the wounded begins. This is where you truly understand the fragility of life. The Roman army did have a medical corps known as medici. These weren't doctors in the modern sense, but more like trained assistants, often slaves or freedmen who had some practical experience with wounds and basic ailments. They traveled with the legion, bringing their crude instruments and limited knowledge. Their hospitals were often just designated tents or temporary structures within the camp, rudimentary at best. The concept of hygiene as we know it was virtually non-existent. Surgical instruments were often reused without sterilization, leading to rampant infections. A gruesome thought, isn't it? That the very tool meant to help you might be the one to seal your fate. For a simple cut or laceration, the medicus might clean it with water or wine, then apply poultices made from herbs, honey, or even spiderwebs. Methods often based on superstition as much as science. You'd be lucky if the wound didn't fester. Infection was the leading cause of death for the wounded. A small scratch, if neglected or poorly treated, could quickly turn into a raging infection, leading to gangrene and almost inevitably amputation or death. You've seen limbs turn black, swelling grotesquely, the smell of decaying flesh a sickeningly common odor in the medical tent. Broken bones were another common affliction, often from falls, impacts, or the sheer stress of marching. The medicus would attempt to set the bone, splinting it with wood and bandages. The healing process was excruciatingly slow, often imperfect, and frequently resulted in deformities or lifelong disability. Imagine trying to keep up with a marching legion with a poorly healed leg, or wield a gladius with a hand that never quite healed right. Your career and often your life could be over with a single bad break. Beyond traumatic injuries, the invisible enemy of disease was a constant threat. As we've mentioned, dysentery and fevers were rampant. Malaria, if campaigning in swampy areas, could be debilitating, leaving you weak, shivering, and susceptible to other illnesses. Pneumonia, tuberculosis, and various skin conditions spread easily through the crowded, unsanitary camps. You'd often see men succumb slowly, their bodies wasting away, their eyes hollow with fever. There were no antibiotics, no understanding of viruses, and very limited effective treatments. A strong constitution and sheer luck were often your best defenses. Archaeological discoveries such as mass graves of Roman soldiers often show a high prevalence of bone infections and signs of chronic illnesses, suggesting that the day-to-day health of legionaries was far from robust. This historical detail underscores the constant battle against unseen pathogens. You, as a common soldier, learned a certain level of self-reliance when it came to minor ailments. You might share rudimentary knowledge with your comrades, a certain herb for a stomachache, a poultice for a boil. You'd learn to staunch a bleeding wound with pressure, to clean a cut with wine if water was scarce. These small practical skills were born of necessity because waiting for the medicus was often a luxury you couldn't afford or a gamble you weren't willing to take. Pain management was primitive. Alcohol in the form of wine was often used, sometimes opiates if available, but generally you simply endured. Imagine a severe wound, a broken bone, or a raging fever, and facing it with little more than a stiff upper lip and the support of your comrades. The capacity for suffering among Roman soldiers was immense, a testament to their resilience and the harsh realities of their time. There's a crude black humor that emerges around these realities. Someone might quip, a good Roman soldier doesn't need a doctor, just a strong drink and a swift end. The psychological impact of seeing your comrades suffer, of witnessing the futility of their struggles against illness or grievous wounds, is profound. You develop a hardened exterior, a protective shell against the constant fear of your own demise by sickness or injury. You learn to steel yourself against the sight of suffering because dwelling on it can break your spirit. Yet beneath that hardened exterior, a quiet empathy often lingers. You help carry a wounded friend, you share your last sip of water with a feverish comrade because you know that one day it might be you in their place. Remember that moment in basic training when you realized your life was tied to the legion? Here you learn that your life is also tied to the well-being of the man next to you. The constant threat of injury also shapes your combat style. You become incredibly aware of your body's vulnerabilities. You learn to protect your vital organs with your shield, to move swiftly, to avoid blows, to fight efficiently, to minimize exposure. Every movement is calculated, every parry precise, because a single mistake could mean a crippling injury. The training emphasizes prevention, teaching you to avoid being wounded in the first place, rather than relying on effective treatment afterwards. After all, the best way to survive a wound is not to get one. So, as you listen to the hacking coughs in the medical tent, or carefully tend to a blister on your own foot, you recognize that Roman military campaigns were not just fought with swords and spears, but against the relentless, unseen forces of disease and the brutal consequences of injury. Survival isn't just about winning battles, it's about navigating a world where a small cut can lead to agonizing death, and a common cold can send you to an early grave. It's a testament to the sheer fortitude of these men that so many manage to return home, carrying not just the scars of combat, but the indelible marks of a constant silent war against their own bodies. You face the physical gauntlet of marches, camps, and the ever-present threat of illness. Yet arguably the most profound and insidious challenges you encounter on a Roman campaign are not physical but psychological. The relentless grind, the constant threat of death, the sheer brutality of war. These forces wage a silent internal battle that can be as devastating as any enemy's sword. You quickly realize that surviving a campaign isn't just about keeping your body intact. It's about holding on to your sanity, your purpose, and your very sense of self. The first psychological burden you experience is the crushing weight of monotony and boredom. Days bleed into weeks, weeks into months, marked only by the repetitive rhythm of marching, digging, and drilling. There are long stretches of nothing happening periods of intense tedium, punctuated by moments of extreme, life-threatening terror. This psychological whiplash is disorienting. You might spend days staring at the back of the man in front of you, your mind drifting only to be snapped back to reality by the sudden alarm, the chilling sound of a bugle signaling an attack. Your mind yearns for stimulation for purpose, but finds only endless repetition. You learn to invent small mental games to recall memories from home or to simply shut down your thoughts, allowing your body to move on autopilot. Then there's the pervasive low-level fear. It's not always the acute terror of combat, but the constant, nagging anxiety that something bad is about to happen. You sleep lightly, your ears straining for unusual sounds. Every rustle in the bushes, every distant shout, every change in the atmosphere of the camp sends a ripple of unease through you. This constant state of heightened alert is exhausting, slowly draining your mental reserves. You learn to live with a knot in your stomach, a quiet dread that becomes a permanent companion. It's the fear of ambush on the march, the fear of disease in the camp, the fear of a surprise attack at night. Remember that feeling of perpetual hunger and thirst. Now imagine a perpetual knot of anxiety in your gut, too. The brutality of combat leaves indelible scars on your mind. You witness unimaginable violence, men screaming bodies mangled the ground slick with blood. You are forced to inflict that violence yourself, to stab, to thrust, to kill. The initial shock gives way to a grim detachment. To survive, you must dehumanize the enemy, see them not as individuals, but as obstacles to be overcome, threats to be eliminated. This psychological defense mechanism is crucial for combat effectiveness, but it comes at a cost. You find yourself becoming hardened, less sensitive, sometimes even numb. The cheerful farm boy you once were is slowly being replaced by a grim, efficient killing machine. You might try to crack a morbid joke with your comrades after a skirmish, a desperate attempt to lighten the darkness, but the images linger. The loss of comrades is another profound blow. You live in incredibly close quarters with these men, sharing every hardship, every triumph, every terrifying moment. They become your family, your brothers in arms, and then one by one they fall. Some die heroically in battle, others succumb quietly to disease in their sleep, or are lost to the elements. Each loss chips away at your spirit. You attend their simple burials, a quick ceremony with little fanfare, and then you move on. There's no time for extended mourning. The legion doesn't stop for grief. You learn to build walls around your emotions to detach yourself, because every attachment carries the risk of unbearable pain. You try not to think about the empty space in your contubernium or the familiar voice that is now forever silent. The powerlessness you often feel is also deeply unsettling. You are a cog in a massive machine. Your individual will subordinate to the commands of your superiors. You march where you are told, fight when you are ordered, and suffer in silence. There's little room for personal choice or autonomy. This lack of control can lead to feelings of frustration, resentment, and a creeping sense of fatalism. You learn to suppress these feelings, to accept your fate, because rebellion is unthinkable and dangerous. You become accustomed to the idea that your life is not your own, but belongs to the legion to Rome. However, amidst these psychological hardships, there are powerful forces that help you cope: camaraderie and shared purpose. The bonds forged in the crucible of a Roman campaign are unlike any other. These men, your contubernales and your fellow legionaries, are the only ones who truly understand what you're going through. You share whispered jokes, mourn fallen friends, and offer quiet encouragement when another man is faltering. You rely on each other implicitly, not just for physical protection in battle, but for emotional support in the soul-crushing monotony of life on campaign. This shared experience creates an unbreakable bond, a sense of belonging to something larger than yourself. Historians still debate the extent to which the strict hierarchical structure of the Roman army fostered genuine bonds of affection versus mere functional interdependence, but anecdotal evidence suggests deep loyalty among fighting units. For you, it's clear these men are your anchors in a storm. This shared identity as a Roman soldier also becomes a powerful psychological tool. You are a legionary, a part of the greatest military force in the world. This gives you a sense of pride, a purpose beyond mere survival. You are fighting for Rome, for glory, for your fellow soldiers. This collective identity helps to distract from individual suffering and provides a framework for enduring the unthinkable. You wear your lorica segmentata with a grim pride, understanding that it signifies not just protection, but your unwavering commitment to the Legion. Furthermore, the very discipline and routine that are so taxing also provide a strange kind of comfort. In a chaotic and unpredictable world, the rigid structure of military life offers a sense of order and predictability. You know what is expected of you: when to eat, when to march, when to fight. This removes the burden of choice and decision-making, allowing you to focus purely on survival. The endless drills become ingrained automatic responses that you can rely on even when your mind is numb with exhaustion or fear. Finally, there's the hope for discharge, the dream of returning home. This distant light at the end of a very long, dark tunnel is a powerful motivator. You picture your family, your village, the life you left behind. You imagine the day you receive your honorable discharge, your land grant, your pension. This hope, however faint, keeps you going through the darkest days, reminding you that there is an end to the suffering, a return to normalcy. It's a fragile hope, often dimmed by the realities of the campaign, but it's always there, a flicker of light in the overwhelming darkness. So as you stare into the flickering flames of a campfire, listening to the whispers of the wind and the distant cries of night animals, you understand that the campaign is not just a test of your body, but a profound crucible for your mind. You are constantly battling fear, monotony, and the specter of loss. But you also cling to the camaraderie of your brothers, the pride of your legion, and the distant dream of home. These invisible battles fought within the confines of your own skull are perhaps the most vital for your ultimate survival. You've mastered the art of marching, endured the camp's rigors, and wrestled with your inner demons. Now the campaign culminates in its most brutal and defining aspect: actual combat. This is where all your training, all your endurance, and all your mental fortitude are put to the ultimate test. You quickly learn that surviving a Roman battle isn't just about courage. It's about discipline, teamwork, and a grim determination to live through the organized chaos. The first sign of impending battle is often the most terrifying: the escalating tension in the ranks. The air crackles with anticipation, a palpable hum of fear and adrenaline. Your stomach churns, a cold knot forming in your gut. You hear the shouts of the centurions, the rhythmic beating of drums, and the chilling blasts of the trumpets signaling formations and commands. You fall into line, your scutum held firm, your gladius ready, your pilum gripped tightly. Your heart pounds against your ribs, a frantic drumbeat urging you forward. You glance at the faces of your comrades. Some are pale with fear, others grimly determined, but all share that same primal flicker of terror in their eyes. As you advance, the enemy comes into view. Perhaps a chaotic horde of screaming barbarians, or the disciplined lines of another empire's army. The sheer noise is overwhelming. War cries, the thud of thousands of feet, the clang of weapons. You brace yourself, drawing on every hour of drill, every shouted command. The smell of dust, sweat, and fear hangs heavy in the air. This is the moment your training takes over, transforming you from a scared individual into a part of a larger, unthinking machine. Your first action in combat is typically the pilum volley. As you close the distance on command, you hurl your heavy javelins at the enemy. The air is thick with their whistling flight, followed by the sickening thuds as they strike shields and bodies. The goal isn't necessarily to kill, but to disrupt the enemy formation, to force them to break their cohesion, and to make their shields cumbersome with embedded spears. You watch with a grim satisfaction as the enemy line wavers, and then without hesitation you draw your gladius and brace for the charge. The moment of impact is a jarring, brutal shock. You slam your scutum into the enemy, feeling the bone-jarring impact through your arm. The sounds become a terrifying cacophony of shouts, screams, and the incessant clang of steel on steel, wood on metal. This isn't a graceful duel, it's a chaotic, desperate press of bodies. You are pushing, shoving, stabbing, and parrying in a tightly packed mass of humanity. Your movements are economical, precise. A thrust, a withdrawal, a quick parry. You aim for exposed limbs, for the gut, for the throat. The gladius is designed for this close-quarters work, and you wield it with a grim efficiency born of countless drills. Survival in combat is heavily reliant on maintaining formation. The Roman legion fought as a cohesive unit, a disciplined block of iron. If a man broke ranks, if a gap appeared, the entire formation could crumble, leaving everyone vulnerable. You are constantly aware of the men to your left and right, their shields overlapping with yours, creating that impenetrable wall. You learn to trust them implicitly, to move with them, to support them, to protect their flanks as they protect yours. This reliance on your comrades is not just strategic, it's psychological. Their presence, their unwavering discipline, is what keeps you from breaking and fleeing in sheer terror. Scholarly analysis of Roman military tactics often highlights the legion's superior discipline and ability to maintain formation under pressure as the key factors in their battlefield dominance rather than individual prowess. You learn to use your scutum not just for defense, but as an offensive tool. You bash with its boss, shoving enemies back, creating small openings for your gladius. It's a shield bash, followed by a quick thrust, a brutal rhythm learned through endless repetition. The weight of the shield becomes an extension of your body, a weapon in itself. You also learn to recognize the signs of an enemy faltering, a weakness in their line, and to exploit it mercilessly. There's no room for mercy in the heat of battle, only survival matters. The exhaustion is immense. Every swing, every thrust, every parry drains your energy. Your lungs burn, your muscles scream. The fight seems to go on forever, a relentless, agonizing struggle. You sweat profusely, your armor becomes a suffocating oven, and the blood, both yours and the enemy's, mingles with the dust on the ground. You might take minor cuts, a glancing blow that draws blood, but you ignore them, pushing through the pain, fueled by adrenaline and the sheer will to survive. One of the less talked about aspects of combat is the sensory overload. The screams of the dying, the clash of weapons, the shouts of commanders, the smell of fear and blood. It's a terrifying assault on your senses. You learn to filter it out, to focus on your immediate task, on the enemy in front of you. Your vision narrows, your hearing dulls to everything but the most immediate threats. You enter a kind of tunnel vision, a detached state that allows you to continue fighting even when your body and mind are screaming for it to stop. After the initial clash, if the enemy holds the battle, can devolve into a grinding, attritional struggle. Waves of attacks, constant pushing and shoving. You might be pulled back from the front line for a brief respite, a chance to gulp down some water. Catch your breath before being sent back into the fray. Roman units were trained to rotate their lines, bringing fresh men forward, while weary ones recovered a tactical innovation that often gave them an edge in prolonged engagements. You welcome the brief moments of reprieve, knowing they are fleeting. Sometimes the enemy breaks. The sight of a retreating foe is a surge of pure elation, a primal roar that erupts from your throat. The chase begins, a chaotic pursuit where discipline often gives way to individual vengeance. You run hacking at fleeing enemies, driven by the desire to eliminate the threat and the sheer release of pent-up aggression. But even in victory, vigilance is key. A desperate enemy can turn, a lone straggler can be dangerous. After the battle, the grim work begins again. You help tend to the wounded, both your comrades and, if ordered, the enemy. You strip the dead of their valuables, a grim but necessary task. You fortify your position, prepare for a potential counterattack. The adrenaline slowly fades, leaving you utterly drained, physically and emotionally. The silence that follows the battle is deafening, broken only by the moans of the injured and the distant calls of scavengers. You sit or lie amongst the dead, feeling a profound exhaustion, a mixture of relief and trauma. You made it. You survived. But the images, the sounds, the smells, they will linger, an invisible scar on your psyche. So, as you lay your scutum down, wipe the blood, yours or another's, from your gladius, and look out over the carnage, you understand that Roman combat is not glorious. It is brutal, terrifying, and utterly exhausting. Survival is a miracle born of rigorous training, unwavering discipline, and the unbreakable bond with the men who fought beside you. You are a warrior forged in the crucible of battle, and every swing of your blade, every block of your shield is a testament to your desperate primal will to survive. You face the enemy in brutal combat, but now you contend with an adversary far more ancient and relentless, the environment itself. Roman campaigns often took legions across vast and varied terrains, each presenting its own unique set of challenges and threats to your survival. You quickly learn that nature in all its indifference can be as deadly as any barbarian sword. Imagine campaigning in the searing heat of the desert. The sun beats down with an unforgiving intensity, turning the air into a shimmering haze. The sand hot enough to cook an egg burns through your thin callagi. Every breath is like inhaling dust and fire. Water becomes an obsession, a desperate nagging need that overshadows all others. Your skin cracks your lips, chap, and the inside of your mouth feels like sandpaper. Mirages dance on the horizon, teasing you with false promises of oases. You learn to conserve every drop of sweat, to move slowly and deliberately to cover your head with whatever cloth you can find. Heatstroke is a constant danger. Its symptoms: disorientation, nausea, collapse, a grim reminder of the sun's power. You see men fall, their bodies giving out under the relentless assault, and often there is little you can do but watch them be carried away, hoping they will recover. Remember that feeling of thirst from the march in the desert? It's amplified 100-fold, a torment that gnaws at your very soul. Then there's the bitter, freezing cold of winter campaigns, perhaps in the northern reaches of Gaul or on the Germanic frontier. The wind howls, cutting through your woolen tunic and even your heavy loriga segmentata. Your breath mist in the frigid air, and the ground once firm turns to frozen mud or treacherous ice. Your fingers and toes grow numb, threatening frostbite. You huddle with your comrades, sharing meager body heat, blowing on your hands to keep them from stiffening. Building a fire becomes paramount, a desperate race against the encroaching chill. You sleep in makeshift tents or under the open sky, wrapped in your cloak, shivering uncontrollably, dreaming of warmth. Hypothermia is a silent killer, slowly draining your core temperature, making you confused, lethargic, and ultimately leading to death if you cannot find warmth. You learn to walk briskly to keep your blood circulating and to seek out any shelter, however small, from the biting wind. Rain, too, is a formidable adversary. Not just a gentle drizzle, but torrential downpours that turn roads into muddy rivers and campgrounds into swamps. Your clothes become soaked, clinging uncomfortably to your skin, and staying dry becomes an impossible dream. The constant dampness leads to chilling cold and the increased risk of skin infections, and trench foot, a debilitating condition where your feet become numb, swollen, and painfully ulcerated from prolonged exposure to wet and cold. Imagine trying to march or stand guard when your feet feel like decaying stumps. You learn to endure the wet, to shrug off the discomfort, knowing that there's no escape until the sun returns. Beyond the weather, the terrain itself presents endless dangers. Dense forests hide ambushes, their tangled undergrowth, making movement slow and exhausting. Swamps and marshes are treacherous, sucking at your feet, hiding unseen pits and dangerous creatures. Mountains demand grueling climbs, their thin air and rocky paths, testing your endurance to the limit. Rivers swollen by rain or snowmelt become raging torrents that must be crossed often with precarious bridges or by forming human chains, risking drowning or being swept away. You become acutely aware of your surroundings, learning to read the land, to anticipate its challenges, and to move through it with caution. Some historical accounts suggest Roman legionaries developed remarkable tracking and environmental awareness skills akin to modern special forces due to their constant exposure to varied and often hostile landscapes. This adaptability was key to their imperial expansion. Wild animals, though not as direct a threat as human enemies, are still a concern. Wolves, bears, and even venomous snakes or insects can pose a danger, particularly if you're foraging or on detached duty. You learn to be wary, to watch your step, and to trust the instincts of the local guides if any are available. A snake bite in the middle of nowhere with no medicus in sight could be just as fatal as a pilum to the chest. The sheer isolation in vast, untamed landscapes can also take a mental toll. Away from familiar towns and villages, surrounded by an alien wilderness, you can feel incredibly small and insignificant. The vastness of nature underscores your own vulnerability. The rustling of leaves, the hoot of an owl, the distant howl of a wolf. These sounds, which might be calming in a civilized setting, take on an ominous quality in the wilderness, hinting at unseen dangers. You cling to the presence of your comrades, their familiar faces and voices, a comfort against the overwhelming wildness. Despite these hardships, you also develop a profound resilience and an almost instinctual connection to the natural world. You learn to find shelter where none seems to exist, to identify edible plants, to read the signs of approaching storms. You become intimately familiar with the patterns of the sun and stars, using them to navigate. Your senses become sharpened, your awareness of your surroundings heightened. You are forced to become a part of the environment, to adapt to its whims rather than try to conquer it. You also learn to appreciate the small comforts that nature offers: the shade of a large tree on a scorching day, the coolness of a clear mountain spring, the warmth of a roaring fire on a freezing night. These moments of natural solace become deeply cherished, brief reprieves from the constant struggle. Remember that moment when you found a patch of wild onions. Now imagine the immense relief of finding clean, fresh water after days of thirst, or the sheer joy of dry socks after weeks of constant dampness. So, as you trudge through snow-covered passes or sweat under the relentless desert sun, you understand that surviving a Roman campaign is not just about defeating your human enemies. It's a constant, brutal wrestling match against the raw, indifferent power of nature. Every element, every terrain, presents a new test of your endurance, your resourcefulness, and your will to live. And yet, through it all, you persevere, a testament to the indomitable spirit of the Roman soldier, forged not only in the fires of battle, but in the relentless crucible of the untamed world. You've traversed continents, survived the heat of battle, and faced down the raw power of nature. You have marched, dug, fought, bled, and endured. Now, as the campaign finally draws to a close, a new set of challenges awaits: the transition back to a semblance of normal life and the enduring scars of war, both visible and unseen. You quickly learn that surviving the campaign is one thing, truly returning from it is another entirely. The moment you receive word of the campaign's end, a strange mixture of elation and apprehension washes over you. There's the overwhelming relief that the constant danger is over, that the brutal cycle of marching and fighting has ceased. You allow yourself to dream, truly dream of a warm bed, a home-cooked meal, and the familiar faces of your loved ones. The weight of your sarcana suddenly feels lighter, the aches in your body less severe. A quiet cheer, a collective sigh of relief ripples through the ranks. But as you begin the long journey home or settle into a more permanent garrison, the physical tolls become undeniable. Your body, once a finely tuned machine of endurance, is a tapestry of aches and pains. Old wounds seemingly healed might throb in damp weather. Your feet, accustomed to the relentless pounding of the march, might protest with every step on softer ground. You've likely suffered numerous minor injuries, sprains, bruises, cuts, that never fully healed, leaving behind nagging discomforts. Perhaps you carry a more significant wound, a limp from a poorly set bone, a hand that doesn't quite work right from a sword cut, or a persistent cough that lingers from a campaign illness. Archaeological studies of Roman legionary skeletal remains frequently show evidence of high rates of osteoarthritis, healed fractures, and dental issues, painting a grim picture of the physical deterioration many soldiers faced after years of service. Your body is a living testament to the hardships you've endured. The mental scars, however, are often deeper and more insidious. The constant state of heightened alert you lived in for months, perhaps years, doesn't simply switch off. Every sudden noise makes you jump, every unfamiliar shadow triggers a flicker of fear. Sleep is elusive, haunted by nightmares of combat, of dying comrades, of the terror you felt. You might find yourself waking in a cold sweat, your heart pounding instinctively, reaching for a gladius that isn't there. The sounds and smells of battle, the cries of the wounded, can replay endlessly in your mind, a relentless echo of the trauma. You might find it difficult to adjust to the rhythms of civilian life. The quiet of home can feel unnerving after the constant clamor of the camp. The simple act of sitting down to a meal might feel strange without the watchful eyes of your centurion or the hurried eating of the common mess. You've been trained to be constantly vigilant, to suspect everyone, to see danger in every corner. This ingrained paranoia doesn't dissipate easily, making it hard to trust, to relax, to simply be. Remember how you learned to filter out the sensory overload of battle. Now you might struggle to process the ordinary, everyday stimuli of civilian life, feeling overwhelmed by too many voices, too many faces, too much normalcy. Relationships with your family and friends might also be strained. They haven't seen what you've seen, endured what you've endured. How do you explain the grinding hunger, the relentless fear, the sheer brutality of taking a life? They might try to understand, but there's a chasm of experience between you. You might find yourself withdrawing, struggling to connect, feeling isolated even amidst your loved ones. Your humor, once lighthearted, has a dark, cynical edge that civilians might not understand. You've changed, and sometimes those closest to you struggle to recognize the person who returned. Historians often speculate on the social reintegration challenges faced by Roman veterans, given the intensity of their military experiences and the stark contrast with civilian life. It's a complex and often overlooked aspect of a soldier's journey. The camaraderie you shared with your fellow legionaries, that deep bond forged in shared suffering, is almost impossible to replicate in civilian life. You miss the unspoken understanding, the shared jokes, the absolute trust you placed in each other. These men were your family, and now you are separated, scattered across the vast empire. You might seek out other veterans, gravitating towards those who truly understand sharing stories and silent nods of recognition. These are the only people who truly get it. For many, the transition is smoothed by the promise of a land grant or a monetary bonus upon honorable discharge. This premium is your reward for years of service, your ticket to a new life. You might use it to buy a small farm, to start a trade, or to settle in a veteran colony. This tangible reward provides a future, a reason to push through the lingering trauma. It offers a chance at stability, a purpose beyond the military. However, some veterans find themselves restless, unable to fully adjust to the quiet life. The discipline, the routine, the constant sense of purpose that the Legion provided can be hard to abandon. Some might re-enlist, finding comfort in the familiar structure and the unwavering camaraderie. Others might become bandits, mercenaries, or guards, drawn back to the only life they truly know, the only life where their hard-earned skills feel relevant. As you eventually settle into your post-military life, whether it's on a small farm in a bustling town or back within the protective walls of a Roman garrison, the echoes of the campaign never truly fade. You carry the memories, the sounds, the smells, the faces of the fallen, and the grim satisfaction of your own survival. You are no longer just a man. You are a Roman veteran, marked by the crucible of war, forever shaped by the brutal campaigns you survived. Your stories, whispered to your grandchildren or shared in hushed tones with fellow veterans, become a testament to the unimaginable hardships and the indomitable spirit required to not just fight, but to survive a Roman campaign. You survived a brutal campaign, a testament to resilience, discipline, and sheer human will. The sun dips below the horizon, casting long, peaceful shadows across the land. The sounds of the day begin to soften, replaced by the gentle hum of the evening. You feel the cool breeze on your skin, a sensation you rarely noticed in the constant heat and dust of the campaign. The distant chirping of crickets weaves a soothing rhythm, a lullaby compared to the incessant clang of weapons or the shouts of centurions. Your muscles, though still bearing the memory of their burdens, begin to relax, yielding to the embrace of the coming night. You close your eyes, letting the images of the campaign fade, replaced by the quiet comfort of the present moment. The journey was long, the path arduous, but here now you are safe. Let the darkness gather, let the peace settle over you, and drift into a deep, well-earned slumber.